Mildly intelligent conversation. My name is Jeremy Snyder. That's some fucked up shit, Eric.
I'm Eric Bondi. Oh my God!
God, I know. This is some weird shit. That's just crazy.
You do it.
Welcome to Mic Drop, Mildly Intelligent Conversations. My name is Jeremy Snyder.
And I'm Eric Bondi, and today we are talking about false flag operations.
We're going to talk about a few false flags that have happened. Some of these are going to be somewhat rumor, and some of these are going to be legit false flags that have happened throughout history. But for starters, we got to let you know what a false flag is. The term comes from fucking spitty shits. You ever get the spitty shits, man? Gross. All right, I'm going to start over. So, for starters, let's talk about what a false flag operation is. A false flag operation is a covert operation conducted by governments, corporations, or other organizations which are designed to appear as if they are being carried out by other entities. The idea comes from the military concept of flying false colors. The term comes from the old days of wooden ships when one ship would hang the flag of its enemy before attacking it. That was called a false flag attack. It was common practice that ships represent their own colors in order to be identified, but over time they quickly realized that, hanging the flag of their enemy was a little more of an effective, sneaky little bitch move, so they started doing it all the time. Anyways, false flags, they're basically the way that the U.S. has been conducting most of its business for the last 1,000 years. I'm joking, maybe about 100 years, maybe even 50, about 100 years, I don't know. Most countries, not just the U.S. So a lot of people have been using false flags to basically push an agenda or as an excuse to be able to go to war when we don't necessarily need a war.
Yeah. I wonder if, back in the day, so like you're saying, somebody would fly a flag of some representing somebody else attacking a ship, so then the people in that ship or these people thought it was somebody else who attacked them, so then they would start a war with that third party.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe pirates or somebody like that would say there's an English ship out there, and you think they would fly an English flag to just get up to that ship so they didn't fire on them and then all of a sudden attack them and take their stuff out?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, something like that too?
The term doesn't
both friendly and...
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're pretending to be the enemy so that you can get close to the enemy and attack it. I mean, it could mean a number of things. I mean, there was times back in the day. I mean, there was times when they did that. There was times when they rose the flag of a completely different third party, third party, and did horrible things so they could blame it on them, and then party one is in the clear because they thought party two and party three were the ones going at it, but party one was pretending to be three, and you know what I mean? Yeah. So it can mean a number of things. That, or they could actually hire pirates like they used to back in the day to go in, pay them to go in and do their dirty deed for them because there's no way they could have done it on their own. And then when they get busted, it's like, those are pirates, man. Hang them. You don't.
Yeah.
They ain't our people. So, false flags have been used quite a bit throughout history to get, like I said, to get a few things done, get a lot of things done that couldn't necessarily be done the right way or whatever way necessary. I got a quote here that I want to read that I think is pretty good. Terrorism is the best political weapon, for nothing drives people harder than the fear of sudden death. That was Adolf Hitler's nice ass. He's such a fucking gentle fuck. Another quote here. The easiest way to gain control of a population is to carry out acts of terror. The people will clamor for such laws if their personal security is threatened. That was Joseph Stalin. That guy's also fucking weird. Neither one of these guys are good guys, but they clearly thought that the idea of a false flag was very, very smart, and I'm sure they carried out quite a few in their day.
Yeah, it's like if you want people to listen, just inflict terror some way, and the people will just be like, Do whatever you can to protect us. We don't want to die.
Oh yeah, they'll. People will do whatever you want as long as you promise to keep them safe. Boom! We almost broke everything.
Bad.
So yeah. We got a couple. Like I said, we're gonna have a couple false flags that we're gonna go over here. A lot of these are legit, factual, instances that took place, and so we'll make sure to let you know which is which. And then some of these are more on the rumor base, but whatever, you decide on your own.
Okay, so here's a list of some false flag operations through history. I'll kind of start it off. Most of these were carried out by the CIA, the U.S. government, and its allies. The USS Maine is where we're going to start. The island of Cuba was first claimed by Spain in 1492 when Christopher Columbus landed on the island. So they remained a Spanish colony until the end of the Spanish-American War in 1898, and for many years the Cuban natives attempted to free themselves from the rule of Spain and gain their own independence. The horrendous actions of the Spanish in the years leading up to this war, and the tactics, aka fake news, of American newspaper men like William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer helped gain the sympathy of the American people towards the rebel cause. The U.S. government was also interested in controlling Cuba, Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico.
So yeah, I mean, they were clearly interested in what was going on in the area, and then therefore they were monitoring everything like we always do. We've always got to stick our nose into everybody else's business, but clearly they made it known that they were going to oversee everything and make sure nothing nasty happened, and everybody was fighting fair, I guess. But at the same time, they wanted a conflict. They wanted to get involved somehow because of the fact that they wanted to take control of a ton of different places, including Cuba, Philippines, Guam, and Puerto Rico. I mean, they would have loved to take control of all of that. So, I mean, and that's what we do all the time. So, I mean, the U.S. is there kind of sticking their nose in it, just waiting for, kind of like, messing with a dog, just waiting for it to nip at you so you can beat the shit out of it. Fuck!
Where's that goddamn dog? So, back to the USS Maine. It arrived in Havana Harbor on January 25th, 1898 to protect U.S. interests and civilians during the pro-Spanish rioting in Havana. So this had a calming effect on the riots. And then on February 15th, so just a few weeks later, the forward hull of the Maine exploded in a devastating blast and was sunk. 266 of the 355 sailors on board were killed. The papers of Hearst and Pulitzer wasted no time in casting the blame on the Spanish and sounded the alarm to go to war. The Navy, in another classic case of government investigating itself, determined that a mine caused the blast, and despite the fact that they had no real forensic evidence, so they just kind of, without doing a ton of investigating, they just decided, hey, it was a mine. So they would not, however, place any blame on who was responsible for the mine. This really didn't matter. Through the U.S. public's mind, it was already, they had already made their mind up. And so, remember the Maine, to hell with Spain was the cry, and the USS Maine false flag was then born.
How the fuck did that happen? Alright, we gotta pause. President McKinley went to Congress and got permission to place a blockade of Cuba on April 21st. Spain then declared war on the U.S. on April 23rd, and immediately following, the U.S. followed suit and declared war on Spain on April 25th. The war was over within 3.5 months and ended August 12th with a U.S. victory. Nice. The Treaty of Paris, 1898, had Spain forfeit control of Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam, and parts of the West Indies. In 1911, the Department of the Navy floated the remains of the ship. So this is the ship that sank. In 1911, the Department of the Navy floated the remains of the ship and conducted another investigation. They once again concluded that the blast was the result of a mine. Many investigators disagree and have a conflicting theory that there was spontaneous combustion of coal next to the magazines of ammunition in the forward hull of the boat. So again, like I was saying earlier, they believed that was what caused the blast. And the reason that is because when they looked at the wreckage, they noticed that the evidence showed that the blast came from within. So the blast blew outward from the hole and not inward like it would have if it was like a mine that caused it to blow up. So that was the thing. They were just jerks, man. I don't like that. Long story short, Spain obviously never even took credit for any of that whatsoever. They never ever admitted that any of that ever happened. So clearly it didn't. I don't think it did. But what do you think? What do you think actually happened there? Do you think that it was a false flag, or do you think that it was like whatever they ran into a mine?
I don't know. I mean, I think if they wanted war, then they would have claimed it, And then just in the notes it says that the Spanish officials and civilians helped with the survivors, and that I don't know that they would help with the survivors if they were trying to kill people. I don't know. So I don't know. I would say it's a false flag.
Yeah, I absolutely do think that as well, and it's only because of
false flag.
All right. I'm going to go false flag as well. So it's 2 false flags, and then I think that's everybody. All right. We're good. False flag it is. Okay.
So the next one is the Gulf of Tonkin, and so this one, I think this one's been proven. Yeah, this is pretty well known as far as false flags go.
Documents have come out saying that this is
declassified.
This is what they say happened isn't really what happened. So
right. So the NSA admits they lied about what really did happen in the Gulf of Tonkin incident in '64. They manipulated data to make it look like North Vietnamese boats fired on a U.S. ship, so as to create a false justification for America's involvement in the Vietnam War.
So again, this one here. This is an incident that happened in the Gulf of Tonkin. This was during the Vietnam War. So, again, another instance where I believe in my heart, I believe that the U.S. wanted to get involved because, damn you, freaking communism. They fucking hated it. They didn't want it to be even spoken of. So, of course, anytime there's communism, the U.S. wants to butt their heads and wipe it out. So go ahead. I'm sorry, but that's what this right here. This incident is what brought us into the Vietnam War. Go ahead.
So, also known as the USS Maddox incident, it involved a falsely claimed confrontation between ships of North Vietnam and the U.S. in the waters of the Gulf of Tonkin. So the original American report blamed North Vietnam for both incidents, but documents later have shown misrepresentation by the U.S. government. So on August 2nd, 1964, the destroyer USS Maddox, while performing a signals intelligence patrol, was monitored by 3 North Vietnamese Navy torpedo boats. Without reason, the Maddox fired 3 warning shots directed at the Vietnamese boat. The confused and probably startled, the North Vietnamese boats replied with torpedoes and machine gun fire. The Maddox then unloaded over 280 shells in that sea battle.
So, again, just like this one we were talking about before, I mean, these people have their own thing going on, and we're just floating around there poking our nose into shit that we don't need to be doing, and there's way more to it. Like, there were a couple of incidents that happened where we came in and kept poking at them. I mean, kept trying to just heat the situation and get them to just fucking do something because we wanted to get involved. Again, that's what I believe. And so anyways, what happens is they get close, and instead of, the Vietnamese, because they're in their waters at this point, and instead of them firing a warning shot and saying, hey, you're getting too close, we decided we were going to, which doesn't make any sense. The original story is that they fired first. So that was like the main thing. It's like they fired on us first, but truth is we fired warning shots is what they call them, but still we fired first, which is what started the back and forth that freaking escalated into hey, this is what happened, and then next thing you know, we're in the Vietnam War. So from that particular instance, 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats were damaged. 4 North Vietnamese sailors were killed and 6 more were wounded. There were no U.S. casualties. The original claim was that U.S. ships took severe damage, but the only damage was a single bullet hole to the USS Maddox. So there's a single bullet hole in this boat, and that is what caused us to go to war and to the Vietnam War. I mean, a shit ton of people died. It's very lopsided. The casualties are extremely lopsided. Way more Vietnamese died than Americans, and whatever. That's a good thing, I guess, because I'm an American. But it still doesn't it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't. It was clearly an unneeded war.
Unneeded, yeah.
Yeah, so they've got
unnecessary loss of life.
According to the information that I got, and again, these numbers could be off a little bit, there was anywhere between 800,000 to over 1 million Vietnamese that died. 655,000 of these were adult males, 143,000 of these were adult females, and 84,000 were just children alone. 64,000 total Americans died. So 20,000 less Americans died than just the Vietnamese children that died in this war. So,
children shouldn't be fighting wars.
I think that it was just a classic case of
Casualty of war.
Kill anything that moves. Yeah. Casualty of war. It's fucking horrible, man. That's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
Operation Northwoods. You might have heard of this one.
Yeah, another pretty well known.
Sorry, this is.
No, you're good.
This is. I like to just do a little bit of an intro so that you get what we're about to talk about. This is actually an instance of something that almost happened. Something that it was basically a plan that was devised, but it never went through because President Kennedy actually shot it. President Kenny fucking somebody killed Kennedy.
You bastards.
President Kennedy actually shot this down, so it never happened. God dang it! I'm stupid. That's what happens. God damn it.
Well, I was gonna ask you earlier if you've been listening to a lot of Tinfoil Hat because you kept saying Vietnamese instead of Vietnamese.
Vietnamese?
Yeah.
Vietnamese?
Vietnamese, yeah.
Vietnamese, not Vietnamese?
Yeah.
Gosh dang it, does he say that?
I don't know, but it sounds like something
Vietnamese. Vietnamese.
Vietnamese. No going back now.
Yeah, dang.
So anyway, Operation Northwoods. This is, and it's pretty well known. It's out there. It's out there.
Gosh dang it.
So the U.S. military was once all too willing to deceive and attack its own citizens for political reasons. So tell me if this sounds familiar. As admitted by the U.S. government, recently declassified documents show that in 1962, the American Joint Chiefs of Staff signed off on a plan to blow up American airplanes and also commit terrorist acts on American soil, then blame it on the Cubans in order to justify an invasion of Cuba. That was pretty much the overall goal of Operation Northwoods.
Sounds like a little bit of that 9/11 garbage, and all of these, God, I mean, we could go into detail on all of these different false flags because they're a podcast on their own. I mean, this is something that we could go into detail on and have a whole show on our own, and we probably will at some point. But again, we're just going to bring up a few instances that happened, and you may not have ever known that they were, especially the Vietnamese. You probably never knew they were even existing. God damn it, I can't stop thinking about the Vietnamese. Nice. Just don't say my knees. But anyways, it's just there we go. Well, yeah, it sounds a lot like 9/11, man. It sounds a lot like what happened during 9/11, and 9/11 again is going to be a show on its own. We'll actually get into it a little bit later, but yeah, it does sound familiar. It does. I feel it. Go ahead.
Well, so
I got that out of my system, Jesus.
In '97, the John F. Kennedy assassination records, the assassination records board review board released a pile of records from the Kennedy era, and among them was a 1962 file or document, and it was titled "Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba." Now, the memorandum mentioned something called Operation Northwoods, and that was a plan to create fake attacks on U.S. military bases and U.S. citizens. And of course, after they carried out these attacks, they would then, blame it on Cuba, say it was Cuba that did it. And so there were hopes to gain public and political support necessary for direct military intervention against Cuba. So once they blame this on Cuba, say, hey, Cuba blew up these planes, etc., then the public would be like, oh my gosh, we need to invade and whatever, basically support it. So the plan wasn't devised by some low-level government agency. It was sent from the Joint Chiefs of Staff to the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara.
Yeah, so, and again, it sounds, a lot of times what you're explaining sounds exactly like a how-to for the shit that happened during 9/11, and it's nuts. I'm a believer of just staying out of everybody else's shit, man. We could save a ton of money on our defense if we just stopped going to war. But again, we kind of have to be at war. We've got a huge defense budget that is expected and needed and wanted, and that money has to be spent. Otherwise, there are going to be some very unhappy people in this world, and we all know who they are. No, we don't. Maybe we do. Yeah. So, anyways, it makes me sick, dude. Doesn't it? They were thinking about creating an attack on us, on fucking normal, everyday, hardworking men and women and children, just so they can justify going to war.
Right.
For something that I think 80% at this moment, I believe it was 80% of the population absolutely did not want to go to war. This was, wasn't it around the same time as the Vietnam War?
It was in the early 60s.
Yeah, so they've had enough. They didn't want to do this anymore. So of course, and Kennedy, was one of the few fucking good guys, dude. So he had some shit going on, but he had more good in him than bad. So he didn't want us fucking going to war.
Yeah, he might have been, from the streets. He might have been like a, mafia.
He had ties in the mafia. He had some shit going on. But again,
it was one of those things. But it was one of those things to where they're just even with the mafia, you don't hit women and children.
Yeah, you have to. And not only that, rising to power at some point, especially in those days, at some point you're going to have to mingle and get intertwined with the mafia somehow. Otherwise, they'll just smother you. Long story short, Operation Northwoods never actually took place. No evidence suggests that any part of the plan was put in play whatsoever. It was actually shut down by President Kennedy, like we said. President Kennedy, man. My gosh, what is wrong with me? President Kennedy said no.
How do you think that worked out for him?
He died. Gosh, dang it, he died. Oh. During the actual presidential campaign in 1960, American Senator George Smathers suggested to Kennedy that they provoke an incident at the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo on the eastern tip of Cuba in hopes of causing a U.S. invasion. Smathers also talked to Kennedy about a plan of having a false attack made on Guantanamo Bay. So
classic Smathers.
Smathers. This one's called Operation Dirty Trick. John Glenn, he is the first man to orbit the Earth. I think for the most part, because that stuff didn't happen very often back then, they probably thought he was going to crash. They were just certain this guy was going to crash. It wasn't going to happen, and it was just going to go badly for the guy. So they immediately started putting plans into place to blame it on Cuba. Anyways, John Glenn, like I said, the first man to orbit the Earth, lifted off into space in a Mercury capsule on February 20th, 1962. Military planners at the Pentagon were thinking of blaming Fidel Castro if the astronaut failed to come back down to Earth. According to secret documents made public, the idea was more of just like I said, a just-in-case scenario than it was like a plan to make this capsule come down. So again, I don't know if they actually went as far as planning to get this to fail as opposed to just thinking it would, and if it did, great. That gives us an excuse to blame something on what's his name. So who knows? that's just another instance, and that was small, nothing big, but it's all kind of related because it was at the same
during the
time.
same, like they were just had a freaking thirst for.
I'm surprised we didn't. I mean, that's crazy. I'm surprised they didn't finally get something to stick so they could do it.
It's funny. It's just like they kept getting just busted and getting shut off.
Yeah. Well, and again, we had that was one of the only instances where we had somebody in office that probably wasn't down with that shit.
Yeah.
And that's why he was the last president to get assassinated. Not ever, but just since. Like last Friday was not our last Friday ever. We're gonna have another one.
Well, yeah. I hope I will definitely enjoy having another Friday.
Fridays are awesome. Saturdays are a little better, but you know what I mean. We get it.
So this, in what I like to call Operation War on Terror.
This is 9/11, guys. The war on terror. I mean, that's realistically, when somebody says they're going to go to war against terror, that's a never-ending war. I mean, there's no way to just take out every quote-unquote terrorist in the world. There are people fucking starting their freshman year in college who do not know what it's like to not be at war. Just that sounds crazy. There's people who are 20 years old, don't know what it's like to not be at war. We've been at war for their whole lives. Yeah. It's just fucking crazy, and it's because of the war on terror. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So many U.S. officials have alleged that 9/11 was a false flag operation by rogue elements of the U.S. government. So the U.S. falsely blamed Iraq for playing a role in the 9/11 attacks, as shown by a memo from the Defense Secretary as one of the main justifications for launching the Iraq War. Now, even after the 9/11 Commission admitted there was no connection, Dick Cheney said that the evidence is overwhelming that al-Qaeda had a relationship with Saddam Hussein's regime and that the media was not doing their homework in reporting such ties. And it's just one of the things that never fucking made sense. It's the worst attack on U.S. soil, but it was believed to have been done by bin Laden and al-Qaeda, but we decide to go to war with Saddam Hussein and Iraq.
Yeah.
And now you can sue. There was a lawsuit on Saudi Arabia, right?
So the facts have come out recently that Saudi Arabia was funding the terrorists that attacked us during 9/11, whether they are al-Qaeda, ISIS, or whoever.
It's not Iraq. I mean, Saudi Arabia's not Iraq.
So families of the deceased during the terrorist attacks can actually now sue Saudi Arabia for I guess having a part in it.
So, top U.S. government officials now admit that the Iraq War was launched for reasons other than 9/11 or weapons of mass destruction. So, despite the previous lone wolf claims, many U.S. government officials now say that 9/11 was state-sponsored terror. But the Iraq War was not the state which backed the hijackers. Obviously, we just talked about that, being Saudi Arabia. So the question remains, why did we go to war in Iraq? Some say there was pressure from Israel. The United States is willing to do anything that Israel asks. Some believe it was because of oil. Regardless, the death toll is sickening. The number of Iraqi casualties is not just a historical dispute because the killing is still going on today. Since several major cities in Iraq and Syria fell to the Islamic State in 2014, the U.S. has led the heaviest bombing campaign since the American War in Vietnam, dropping 105,000 bombs and missiles and reducing most of Mosul and other contested Iraqi and Syrian cities to rubble.
Yeah, just destroyed them. So the casualties, for one, have been lied about for the longest time, so there's no way to really look it up. I mean, you're going to see 10 different numbers, but, I mean, I'm sure it's a ton. And most, again, women and children. Not most. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are fucking terrorists, because that's what the goal is to take out terrorists, essentially. But it's also, I mean, in doing so, they're killing women and children, people who had nothing to do with it. They just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe that wrong place is the Middle East. I don't know, but it sucks because, again, I guarantee, I bet you these numbers are going to be close to what we had at Vietnam, if not more, because, I mean, it probably is way more because of how long we've been there. It's nuts because I don't even want to know. I think it's going to be sickening. This isn't necessarily a false flag. This was also an instance where we planned something. We tried to do something here, and I believe that what we tried to do here, we did. I think it's something that legitimately happened, and I'll go into it and let you know why. But there was an idea floated out there that former Department of Justice lawyer John Yoo, he suggested in 2005 that the U.S. should go on the offensive against Al Qaeda and have our intelligence agencies create a false terrorist organization. It could have its own website, recruitment centers, training camps, fundraising operations, and it could launch fake terrorist operations and claim credit for the real terrorist strikes, hoping to sow confusion amongst the ranks of all these other terrorist organizations like Al Qaeda and whatever. So that was right around 2005 when this idea was floated out there. Something ironic that happened right about that same time was the creation of ISIS. ISIS, which, I mean, it used to be Al Qaeda. It was named Al Qaeda, but they changed their name to ISIS right around that same time. I'm going to go into kind of the history here of Al Qaeda just so you can see why it was formed to, or why it was changed to ISIS and whatnot. But it happened about the exact same time. The U.S. invasion on Iraq began in 2003. The roots of ISIS trace back to 2004 when the organization known as Al Qaeda in Iraq formed Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. I think I got that right. Zarqawi, I think I remember that name pretty well, but he was originally part of Osama bin Laden's Al Qaeda network. He founded this militant group when Zarqawi was killed during a U.S. strike in 2006, Egyptian Abu Ayyub al-Mazri, I think I got that right, became the new leader, and at this point he changed the name of the group to ISI, which stood for Islamic State of Iraq. And then in 2010, Masri died in a U.S.-Iraq operation, and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and we know who Baghdadi is because I believe that's the guy that just died not too long ago, finally took him out.
Not to be confused with the daddy bag.
Yeah.
The Baghdadi and the daddy bag.
Yep. Because inside it's baggity dad. So, whatever. Dude. Anyways, Baghdadi took over, and when the civil war in Syria started, ISI fought against Syrian forces and gained ground throughout the region, and in 2013 the group officially renamed themselves ISIS, which stands for Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. So once they moved into Syria and started slaughtering motherfuckers, they changed their name to ISIS. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot going on back there. That on itself is a completely different podcast, so I don't want to go into that until we have
so,
time.
Do you think that ISIS was created by the CIA?
I believe the CIA. I believe that the CIA and Mossad, which is the Israeli CIA, I believe together they created. I think they created ISIS. I believe so. I absolutely think that they created it as they're the ones that they hire. They pay them to go do the things that they need to have done so that they can go to war here and wherever. So yes, I do believe that it's a CIA organization.
Yeah. All right.
So go ahead and hate me now. What do you think?
I think it's very plausible. I think it's possible. I think especially after, after we've just kind of shown we've been actively bombing people for decades and maybe even longer, and mainly
absolutely
because
longer.
Yeah, and that's because of these false flags. And so why not create a terrorist organization that you can use to go to war?
Yeah.
So
yep. Sorry I swear all the time. I need to stop doing that. I feel bad when I swear. I'm gonna clean my mouth up. And also, we're gonna get better at this, man. I'm sorry I want it to be more fluid, maybe less reading, more research, and then just come out and freestyle. But I'm just worried that the ums and ahs are going to drive people nuts. So I'm trying to make it as fluid as possible. So is Eric here, so don't get pissed off at us because we're big old fat idiots.
I don't have any of that in my notes.
Yeah, I didn't put them in there. And see, okay. I just started talking from the heart, man, and I did a lot better. That's my dog.
So, just a few other things to touch on, and if you want to start, or
well, other than the fact that I think when I a lot of times I like to say that these people, the bad people in America that are causing all these problems is the U.S. government. Now, it's not everybody in the U.S. government, but I do believe that there are some big players in the government that know and are knowledgeable of what the hell is going on. I believe that it's a lot darker in Congress than what most people think. And the thing is it's because it can be. The United States is never ever going to be held accountable for the horrible things that we've done throughout history. Neither will some of the other countries, unless of course we hold them accountable.
Yeah, because who's going to hold us accountable?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the UN, Canada, France, UK, and Germany. They could all come together and decide to throw sanctions on the U.S. for the horrible shit that we do. But the truth is, we actually have veto power. So the minute they do that, we'll just be like, nah, that's not going to happen. You guys are silly.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no way to hold us accountable for anything that we do. And I say us, because I live here, but it's not me. I hate it. I really, really do. So it's, and I didn't always believe this. I used to freaking think,
you subscribe to the mainstream
I
media
believed every bit of it.
narrative.
I thought that what I saw on the news was right. I'm like, yeah, we're not, it's not that bad. I thought everything I saw on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all that shit, I thought that shit was legit. But you can't believe anything whatsoever that you see in the news. And I also, I thought that Barack Obama was a heck of a dude, man. I thought he was a really good president. And the thing is he just has that face and that act. He had the persona that he could put off being a good guy. Which most people would be like, yeah, Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. He's a peaceful person. It's like this. At this time when he won this, he had taken out more drone strikes than any other administration ever. So I mean, this guy is.
That doesn't sound very peaceful to me.
No, he's got a lot of blood on his hands, man. And almost everybody does that's made it to the White House. It's just how it is, man. But, anyways, I don't know. I think we did good, dude. I think that's fine. I think that was a good show. That was a lot of stuff. Is that good?
I think it's good. The one thing that we didn't talk about is the media. Do you want to touch on that or?
Well, the reason why you can if you want. I mean, we can. Whoever. The reason why we don't really trust the media is because you can't. Because the media is not like it used to be. I mean, back in the day, maybe you could. I'm pretty sure there were some lies back then too. But the truth is the media is owned by 4 or 5 different families. I mean, it's such a small group of people that, they can get together and they can make you see whatever they want. And this isn't just the news, man. This is a lot of what regular shit we watch on TV.
Yeah.
So
they can basically put, they decide what to put out as movies or TV shows, and there might be agendas in there, and I'm not saying there isn't. I'm not saying there is, but I mean, the fact that Fox is the Rupert Murdoch family, CNN is Ted Turner and Time Warner, NBC is the Roberts family, ABC is the Walt Disney Corporation, Robert Iger is the president and chair, and they're owned by Boeing, and then CBS is Viacom / National Amusements, and that's Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, so I mean, ABC and CBS are owned by the 2 biggest defense contractors, weapons contractors in the world. So, of course...
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, these are the guys that make money when we go to war.
And they're subsidiaries of, Fox and CNN and NBC. I mean, they have so many, a family tree.
Oh, shit. Yeah,
it's not just, hey, out of the 3,000 channels that you can watch, these are the 5 or 6 that are owned by these companies. It's like all those channels stem from these companies or whatever, so...
Yeah, those guys there have a lot of power. Those are some guys I wouldn't want to fuck with. I mean, they'll make you disappear in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think? Is that good?
Cool. I loved it. I thought we did a good job. Yeah. We covered some good stuff, and
we could go over so much more on each one of these individual individual false flags, and we probably will later on. I mean, this is only our second show, so we're going to cover some more of that stuff and go into detail. When you go into detail, all these other false flags we've gone through, when you actually go into detail, it gets crazier and crazier. So it'll make for some good talking.
Yeah.
Hey, what's that noise?
All right, man. Well.
Hello.
What's happening?
Right on, man. We got somebody here.